will be the most powerful country in the world in 2025, America or Russia? Okay, so we're gonna do something a little bit different today. We are going to talk about the power projection capabilities of the United States versus Russia. And what I want to do is kind of lay out a case study here, both of the physical military capabilities of each nation, but also how those nations project power abroad through sort of economic sanctions, diplomatic pressure, etc. Because at the end of the day, war is a totality of effects. So we have to look beyond just raw military power when we talk about who has the advantage. So let's start first with some general thoughts on American power. So the US military spends over $700 billion a year. It's got more than 1 million active duty personnel, close to 900,000 in reserve, and it maintains a nuclear arsenal of roughly 5,000 weapons. The US Navy controls the seas and can deploy carrier strike groups anywhere in the world within days. And the US Air Force has bases around the globe from which they can launch air strikes anywhere in the world within hours. The US intelligence apparatus is unrivaled, and they can collect signals, imagery, cyber, intel anywhere in the world with very little notice. The US has a history of projecting power around the world and has intervened in dozens, if not hundreds of countries across the planet. And these interventions have often been met with significant success. But perhaps more importantly, the US does not operate in a vacuum. It has allies, many of whom also maintain significant militaries, including NATO countries, Japan, Australia, Israel, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, among others. And so the US can draw upon a reservoir of military power that is simply unmatched by any other country in the world. So now let's turn to Russia. So Russia spends about $60 billion a year on its military. That's less than 10% of what the US spends. It has about 1 million active duty troops, about 2 million in reserve. Its nuclear arsenal is also about half that of the United States, about 2,500 weapons. Russia does maintain a navy, but it is much smaller than the United States. And while it does have submarines that can project power into the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, they do not have the reach or capability of the US Navy. The Russian Air Force is significant, but again, it does not have the global reach of the US Air Force. In addition, Russia has a relatively small intelligence apparatus, and it cannot collect intelligence outside of its borders nearly as effectively as the United States can. Russia does, however, have one significant advantage in terms of sheer size. Russia is the largest country in the world by far. It spans 11 time zones and 2 continents. And this gives it a degree of strategic depth and flexibility that the United States simply does not have. And this is likely to remain an advantage for Russia for the foreseeable future. In terms of projecting power, Russia has few allies, none of which maintain significant militaries. Belarus is perhaps its closest ally, followed by Syria. Over the past decade, Russia has attempted to project power in Ukraine, Syria, Libya, and elsewhere with limited results. And this is largely due to a lack of resources. The Russian military is significantly underfunded compared to the US and NATO, and this has resulted in a force that is poorly equipped and poorly trained. For example, according to a number of reports, many Russian tanks do not even have working engines. And the quality of Russian equipment in general is far below that of NATO. Now, in terms of pure military power, I think it's fair to say that Russia would probably win a fight against the United States. If we just look at raw numbers, Russia has more troops, more tanks, more artillery, more air defense systems. And it also has a greater degree of strategic depth. So if we just look at this table and we see that Russia has 100 tanks and the United States has 90 tanks, it might seem that Russia has a slight advantage in tanks. But we know that is not the case because we know that the quality of Russian tanks is extremely poor, and in many cases, they can't even be fixed. And so if you look at a sort of an apples-to-apples comparison of tanks, Russia actually has about 3,000 tanks, which is still well below the 10,000 maintained by the United States. So if we just look at military power alone, I think it's clear that the United States has a significant advantage. Its technology is superior, its training is superior, even its logistics and its ability to sustain itself far greater than that of Russia. However, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, war is a totality of effects. And so we have to look beyond just military power when we talk about who has the advantage. And in this regard, I think it's clear that the United States has significant advantages over Russia. First, the United States has allies. It has a web of alliances and partnerships that span the globe. And this gives it a degree of legitimacy and support that Russia simply does not have. Second, the United States has a large population and a booming economy. It is home to some of the most innovative and powerful companies in the world, and it can produce military equipment and sustain its military operations indefinitely. Third, the United States has a long history of military intervention. It has a deep well of experience from which to draw, and it has a cadre of highly skilled officers and non-commissioned officers. And finally, the United States has something that Russia does not have access to, namely the vast majority of the world's financial system. And so if we look at a fight between the United States and Russia in 2025, I think it's clear that the United States would win. There is simply no way that Russia could mount a credible defense against the combined military might of the United States and NATO. Russia could certainly inflict damage, but ultimately, it would be no match for the firepower and resources of the United States and its allies. And so at the end of the day, I think there is no question that the United States is the most powerful country in the world. And this is likely to remain the case for the foreseeable future. Now, of course, things could change. The United States could elect a president who is not committed to maintaining a strong national defense. It could become embroiled in a conflict with China over Taiwan that weakens the US military, or China could become the dominant economic power and eclipse the United States. But barring unforeseen circumstances, I think it is safe to say that the United States will remain the most powerful country in the world in 2025. Alright, that's it. I just wanted to kind of mix things up a little bit and talk about something other than the day-to-day events in Ukraine. And what do you guys think? Is America truly the most powerful country in the world? What about China? Is it a rising power that will overtake the United States by 2025? Let me know in the comments below, and of course, if you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. I appreciate all you guys that have subscribed. You've helped me reach my goal of reaching 100,000 subscribers by the end of the year, and I hope to have you all on the next video. Thank you so much, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers!